DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy. We did a hardcover book on this subject. We have a codified entire system that you can take. We have a university, and you'll listen to the daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to be your own public relations team. How to be your own PR. Do you need to hire a PR company? No. I'm gonna tell you how to do it yourself. Now, shout out to everybody who does have a PR company or you do PR work. Don't be mad at me. I'm throwing some rocks and throwing some salt maybe on your game here, but there's a reason why I'm talking about this topic here today. 5 or 6 years ago, I knew that in order for me to get my name out there, get myself known in the space that I was trying to get into the thought leadership world, I knew I needed to get myself seen. I knew that nobody really knew me for the things that I wanted to go out and talk about. If I was known, it was only known for playing basketball and YouTube videos. That was pretty much all I had done to that point that was publicly noted. And I went and hired a public relations company. I found a PR company in South Florida. I don't even remember the name of the company, but I wouldn't say their names. I'm not going to bash them here because they didn't really do much for me. What they did was, let me see, what did they do? They landed me on I did a couple of radio appearances, and imagine that, radio, in 5 years ago. And then I appeared on a couple podcasts / radio shows, but the guy who ran it was this older white guy. He's a middle-aged white guy, cool enough guy, nice enough gentleman. He had a younger black guy that worked for him and a black woman who was like his assistant. Those are the only 3 people in the company that I ever dealt with directly. And they would just say, hey, we got you this interview on this date. We got you this interview on this date, this interview on this date. And I would get on the phone or mostly it was on the phone. I think I did one in-person interview. It was in Boca Raton, Florida. I did an in-person interview on the radio. But other than that, everything was on the phone that we did. And I worked with them for about 3 months. And one of the biggest challenges with dealing with this company, and one of the reasons why I ended up firing them, that's the end of the story, I fired them after 3 months, was that the stuff that they were doing, I realized I could do this stuff myself. They're not doing anything for me that I haven't been able to do myself before. Now, to this day, we're talking 2021, I've been on probably 200 shows, whether we're talking YouTube shows, IG lives, or any kind of live streaming show that people have, or when it comes to being on somebody's podcast or being on the radio or just being asked to appear on any type of show that another person has, another person's media. I've been on probably about 200 of them. This PR company that I hired for about 3 months in 2015, they got me on, I probably did maybe 7 or to 10 appearances based on what they did. So it's not like they didn't do anything, but the things that they were doing, I could do myself, obviously. So as I said, I've been on 200 and 190 of those were done by my legwork or process that we created here at Work on Your Game. And I remember when I fired them, I called the guy because I only dealt with him, the main guy who ran this company. I don't even remember his first name. But anyway, I called him and told him, hey, I'm discontinuing my work with you guys. It's a wrap. And he paused for a minute and he was like, okay. The way that that's exactly how he said it. He's like, okay. And like he was wondering, he wanted to know why. And I followed up and told him, hey, you guys are not doing anything for me that I can't do for myself. And he didn't argue with me. He didn't do any back and forth. He just said, all right, well, that's your decision. It's your decision. And we hung up. And about a day or 2 later, though, I received an email from this guy's assistant. And his assistant was the woman who would, like every month, she would send me the invoice. And she was a black woman. I never met her, but I could tell she was black. I think I spoke to her once, but I could also tell by her name. And she sent me a message. Now, she works for this guy. She's his assistant. And she sent me a nasty message letting me know, and this is what she said to me. She said, well, Dre, I'm sorry to hear that you don't want to work with our company anymore, whatever the name of the company was. And then she went on in her next paragraph. She was like, well, public relations is an investment that you need to make. And we landed you several interviews, and these interviews are not free. And getting yourself seen out, getting yourself known out here in the world is not free. We work very hard for you. And I remember reading that message. I didn't do a back and forth with her. I didn't say anything back to her when she said that. But the way that I saw it and the way that she had worded the message and just the type of work that they had done, she sounded like the death knell of a dying company. Now, who knows if they're still in business to this day? If they are, I have no idea how, because again, this guy was an older guy, middle-aged guy, and his assistant was an older woman, middle-aged woman. And the type of shows that they were getting me on, you should have seen the shows they were getting me on. I remember I did a radio interview with this woman who was like 83 years old. True story. 83-year-old white woman they got me on the show with. The radio interview I did in Boca Raton where these, who knows how old these people are. These people were probably in their 40s. They had a radio show. And I'm like, nobody who's listening to this show is looking for the type of stuff that I'm talking about. Maybe a handful. I wouldn't say nobody. Maybe a handful. And I'm just listening to the things that they're saying. I remember, here's a funny thing. The 83-year-old woman who they landed me this gig, this appearance. She had a radio show. This is not a podcast. It was a radio show. And I'm talking to her and she's like, we're going to do it by phone. You call in on the phone and we had like a pre-call call. So I spoke to the woman for about 5-10 minutes before our actual interview. And I gave her my number and she was asking me some background questions. And I told her, hey, I'm from Philadelphia, but I live in South Florida. And she was like, oh, I noticed that you had a 267 number. 267, I think she knew something about either South Florida or Philadelphia, one or the other, but she knew it wasn't a South Florida number. And this is what she advised me, just to give you an idea of the type of people they were getting me on shows with. This woman advised me, she said, well, you know what you need to do, Dre, you need to change your number to a South Florida number. You need to get a local phone number because if you meet any women down here in South Florida and they see you still have a Philadelphia number, they're going to think you're not serious about sticking around and they're probably not going to want to date you. This is the advice that she gave me and she was absolutely not joking. And this is what she told me. This is in 2015. We're not talking 1985. 2015. This is what this woman told me. And this is the type of shows that they were getting me on. These radio shows or these people who I had never heard of. And this assistant woman, I don't even remember her name. She sent me this nasty message saying, well, getting you seen and landing you on shows and getting you media appearances is not free. These things cost money. Well, let me tell you all something. All right, I'm out of that story. Let me tell you all something. These 200 plus shows that I've appeared on over the last 5 years, I have never, ever paid anybody to be on any one show. Never. Only thing I paid with is in my time and in the game that I give and the value that I'm giving to the audience. Now, any of you who has your own show or any of you who has been on other people's shows, has any of you ever paid someone to be on your show? Has any of you ever charged somebody? Now, there are a few shows out there, as a matter of fact, that would, if I've reached out to them, they might reach back and say, well, we have people pay us to be on the show. There's a handful. I could probably count them on one hand, a number of shows that have said something like that. But for the most part, you don't have to pay to get media appearances. Maybe back in the day, like this company, I'm sure their heyday was back in the day, maybe 20, 30 years ago, when in order to get yourself seen, you had to go through certain gatekeepers. And if you didn't have a PR company, then nobody could get to know you. And there was no way for you to get into those doors or get into those rooms because nobody knew who the hell you were. But nowadays, with the democratization of what you're listening to right now, like, I don't have to know anybody, shake anybody's hand. I only have to leave my house and I can publish and talk to millions of people every single day. I don't have to know anybody. I don't have to be approved of by anybody. Now, this company that I had dealt with, this PR company, and I want to make sure I'm throwing a disclaimer in here. These were some old motherfuckers from, again, back in the days when you actually did have to pay somebody in order to get yourself seen, heard, and known. They are not some new, fresh PR company. Now, I know of and have heard of and have met some people who work in PR who are younger and they understand the kind of world that we're in right now. So do not take the story that I'm giving you as a blanket. All right, this is why you should never do PR. You should never hire a PR company. There are some PR people out there who are actually very good. They understand the current landscape and they are doing things that are actually more contemporary and actually working for people and getting them the kind of attention that they would need to get in this century, or in the 21st century, that actually makes sense. All that being said, this company that I dealt with was my first and last engagement with a PR company. And that's not to say I would never do PR ever again. And this is not necessarily a trashing of the public relations industry. This is not a trashing of people who work in public relations. This is not saying that you should never hire PR because they can't do anything or they're a complete waste of money. But depending on who you are and what you're doing, it can be a complete waste of money and you probably don't need it depending on where you are in your business and in your industry right now. There will be cases where maybe you could benefit, but You can do a whole lot of it on your own, and you can get yourself known. You can get on you can be on people's shows. You can get on other people's platforms. You can share your game and get your name out there without hiring a public relations company. Again, the person that you are listening to right now is proof positive of this being able to be done. You can go to dreallday.com/media. You can see the media page on my website that shows you the shows that I've been on, the appearances that I made over the last 5 years. I just started doing that in 2015. So between 2015 and now, I've been on a lot of platforms, whether we're talking print media, podcasts, radio shows, video shows, and things like that. And again, I'm not telling you that to impress you, but to impress upon you as we go into the topic that we're talking about here today. You can do this on your own. And when I say on your own, I don't necessarily mean you personally had to do all the work. If you have an assistant, if you want to hire somebody to do some things for you, you can do these things on your own. And these are the ways that you would be your own PR team. Now, what I'm going to be talking about here today are the high level overview look of how to do your own public relations. But what I'm going to create inside of Work On Your Game University is a course on the exact bells and whistles, the exact structure and the tactical things that you would put in place in order for you to be able to pitch yourself and get yourself known out here and get yourself seen in the media game on other people's platforms so that you can take your message and the game that you have and spread it out to the world. So what we're talking about here today is making sure that you actually have that game and you actually have that message in place before you start doing your own public relations, so that when people do see you, you actually have something to show them and something of value that they're like, you know what, I'm actually interested in that. Let me go find out what Mike is talking about. Let me go see what Misty's business is. Let me go see what Brandon is selling. Let me go see what she is putting out, whoever that happens to be. So all that being said, let's get into it. Point number one, the topic once again is how to be your own public relations agency. Number one, have a compelling presentation. When I say compelling presentation, am I talking about the way that you look? Am I talking about the things that you say? Am I talking about what you're talking about? Am I talking the industry that you're targeting? Am I talking the offerings that you have or whatever it is you're using to entice people to come further into your ecosystem? Which one am I talking about? I'm talking about all of them. All of this is part of your presentation. No one is interested in a person who's uninteresting. What makes you interesting? Now, this is not to be interesting, be interested. That's not what we're talking about here. This is not the listening part. This is the part where you actually have the megaphone and you are making a noise and you want people to pay attention to you. It needs to be something compelling, hopefully several things compelling about what you are presenting to an audience. Otherwise, they're not going to pay attention to you. Otherwise, actually, you never get in front of the audience in the first place. Has to be something compelling about your work, about you or about your work, ideally both, that is attention grabbing. If you go see the episode that I did on personality, this is on the personal side of things, you're going to need a little bit of this. I told you that one of the keys to personal branding, episode number 878, one of the keys is personality, meaning the way that you talk, the way that you present yourself, how you look, the way that you articulate your points, whatever it is that you're offering. Why are you doing the thing that you're doing? All of these things are part of your personality package. This is all part of your presentation. And if this part is not compelling, then no one is really going to be interested in you. So this is why you really need to look at your offering, and your offering being yourself and your stuff, your materials, your brand, your ecosystem, your product, whatever it happens to be, your mindset, your framework, whatever it happens to be. And we have masterclasses on every single one of those that I just mentioned right there. It needs to be compelling. It needs to be attention grabbing. It has to break the monotony of what people have already seen. It needs to be something that people are like, I haven't seen this before. I haven't heard this before. And no one has approached it from this angle before that's going to get them interested and say, all right, I want to have you on my platform so my audience can see and hear and feel what you're talking about, because I haven't seen it approached from this angle in this way before. You're the first one to do it in this way. This is part of your compelling presentation. What's compelling about you? What are you offering? If you had to say it in one sentence, what are you bringing to the table that people haven't heard before, haven't seen before? They can't just gloss over it and say, all right, I already know what you're about. I already know what you're going to say. I already know what I'm getting. Can you answer that question? Because if you can't, then you have more work to do on what your presentation is. This is part of your public relations. This is part of the strategy of your public relations before you start doing anything. Point number two, today's topic, once again, is how to be your own public relations agency. Learn how to pitch. P is in purple. ITCH. Learn how to pitch. Not bitch, but pitch. This is 80% of the game, is your pitch. If you want to know how I was able to do 4 TEDx talks. I've been asked this on many shows that I've been on. How were you able to do these TED talks? How'd you get on these 200 show appearances that you've done, Dre? How did you play a professional basketball overseas when nobody knew you coming out of a Division III college? Now, did I have skill? Do I have skill to speak on a stage? I absolutely do. Do I have a framework that is worth paying attention to, that is not the normal, it's off the beaten path with work on your game? Absolutely. Did I have talent to play professional basketball? Yes, I did. Is the presentation part of it? Of course. The way that I present myself, the way that I look, the fact that I don't look like the average or the normal, no thought leader in the world that we have today? Absolutely. Did that matter? All those things matter. But understand, there are many people out there who have those exact same things. They have a framework, they have ability, they have talent. They will be good if they actually were seen, heard, and known by anybody, but they have remained anonymous. You know why they're anonymous? Because they don't know how to sell themselves. Having skill and talent is one thing, and being able to sell your skill and talent is a completely different thing. This is why in Work on Your Game University, the entire Work on Your Game system framework, there are 3 steps. First of all, developing your game, working on your game. That's what we're doing right now. That's having the skill, that's having the talent, that's having the ability. That means knowing that you can play, that's working on your game. The second step is showing your game, making sure that people see your game, know about your game, hear about your game, get to feel and experience your game, and understand that you might have to sell just to get a chance for anybody to take a look at your game. So it's 2 parts to selling your game. Many people who have a lot of game, they have mastered step 1, never mastered step 2, or they're completely unaware of step 2. So they're wondering why they never get to step 3, which is getting the return on investment from your game. That's the entire Work on Your Game framework right there, what I just gave you. Now, if you listen to this show every day, then you're probably doing some type of work on your game. Even if you're just thinking about it, at least you understand that part, that you do have to develop yourself. The world is not going to come beat a path to your door. You have no game. So you're doing that part of working on your game. Most of the time people come to me, they're doing some level of working on their game. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to work or where to strategize working or where to focus on with their work. But nobody comes to me like, Dre, I had no idea I was going to have to actually do work to develop my skill. Most people understand that if they listen to anything that I've ever put out. You probably get that. Here's the part that many people don't get, or they just don't know what to do with it, which is showing your game, selling yourself. In case you were wondering, there is a course called Sell Yourself that is available in Work on Your Game University at the season level and up. And I also wrote a book called The Seller's Mindset. You can get that at workonyourgame.com. Now, you got to be able to sell yourself. TED Talks, being on people's shows, playing pro basketball, all of these happen. Yes, skill, yes, talent, yes, ability. But the biggest thing, selling myself. If I didn't know how to sell myself, I would have those same concepts, those same ideas, that same material, I would never have presented it on a TED stage. Why? Because I couldn't sell myself. I couldn't get them to pick me. Out of 300 people applied to do a TED Talk, they picked 12 speakers. I would never have been chosen if I didn't know how to sell myself through that application. The Work on Your Game framework has existed for a while, and who I am is who I am. I've been this person for a long time, but I never would have been able to land on other people's platforms like Grant Cardone's platform, Entrepreneur on Fire, or the Bigger Pockets podcast, or the Sharpton Show, or any of those shows if I didn't know how to sell myself. I still had the material. The material has not changed, but it wouldn't have been on all those other platforms if I couldn't sell myself. Playing professional basketball, yes, talent, yes, skill, yes, working on my game, dribbling and dunking and how high can you jump and making 3-pointers, all of those things. Listen, I'm not the first nor the last basketball player able to do those things, even coming out of a Division III school. Nothing special about the abilities that I had. Well, it was something special, but not that special. I mean, it wasn't LeBron James. I mean, it was something, but it wasn't LeBron James. What was the reason why I was able to play? Because I could sell myself. Were there other players coming out of D3, D2, D1 who probably had a comparable skill level to what I had who weren't able to play or play as long as I played? Of course. I'm not going to deny that. There are players who had the same or at least a close enough skill level to the same skill level that I had during the time I was playing professional basketball who didn't play a minute of pro basketball. Why is that? They couldn't sell themselves. I want that one to sink in. There's a book by Orrin Claff called Pitch Anything that can at least get you started on this. So you should look that book up and read it. I also like Grant Cardone's stuff on pitching and selling. His whole ethos is around money and sales. So if you were to look into both of those guys, Oren Klaff and Grant Cardone, they both have good stuff on selling. And you look into this other guy named Dre Baldwin. He has a book called Seller's Mindset and a course called Sell Yourself that you can get in his university. Also a guy by the name of Jim Edwards, who I talked about in my favorite podcast episodes. That was, where is that one? That was episode number, I'm looking through my list. We got so many episodes here now that this list just keeps getting longer and longer. Episodes number 1637 and 1638, favorite podcast that I listen to. I mentioned Jim Edwards' show, which is called the Sales, Copy, and Content Marketing Hacks Show. He's a good guy when it comes to copy. And when I say copy, I'm not talking about copy paste. I'm talking about copy as in writing that is meant to persuade. He's good on talking about the actual technical side of how you say things, what exact words that you use, not how you say it, but the words that you use in order to pitch and get people's attention. We call it a hook in digital marketing. So the challenge that I would give you, here's the challenge I would give everyone who's listening to this right now. If you want to know whether you have a compelling pitch, tell me in 45 seconds or less why I should give a damn about you and what you do. 45 seconds. Why should I give a damn about you and what you do? And I'll give you a small hint here. Every single word that you speak must earn its way into your pitch. No wasted words, no ums and ahs, no, what do we call those? No word fillers, that's what we call those. It needs to be a tight pitch that's tight enough that people understand why they want it. How do I introduce the show every single day? It doesn't mean everybody's gonna want it, but I introduce it in such a way that you know what the show is about even before I get into the material. You know if this is for you or if it's not. It's not the Dre Baldwin show, which could be anything. If you don't know who I am, you have no idea what I'm gonna talk about. But I say on this show, discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative. All right, if you're not interested in those topics, you're not listening. But if you're still listening to me right now, there's a reason. I told you in 30 seconds what the show is about and what you're gonna get and why you would wanna listen and why you don't wanna listen. I'm rejecting some people away when I give that introduction every single day. Everybody ain't interested in this. How many people you know who ain't interested in discipline? How many people you know who don't want to hear anything about mental toughness? How many people do you know who have talent but don't take any initiative? All right, this show ain't for everybody. How many times have you heard me say that? So tell me in 45 seconds or less why I should give a damn about you and or what you do. Ideally both. This is your pitch. And yes, you got 45 seconds. Most of the time you only got that. You might only have 30, you might only have 15. I mean, how short are people's attention spans these days? Point number 3. Today's topic is how to be your own public relations agency. The third thing, let's get a definition of public relations. It is the professional maintenance of a favorable public image by a company, organization, or famous person. So you are a company, you are an organization, you may or may not be famous, depending on how you define the word, but you are a company or organization. Do you want to professionally maintain a favorable public image? I think everybody wants a favorable public image. Even if somebody's public image is being disliked, they like the fact that they're being disliked. So it's favorable to them. So everyone wants to have a favorable public image. Even if the public that you're referring to doesn't have to be the whole world or the country or even the city. The public could be the company that you work for. That could be your favorable public image. But what we're talking about here specifically are people who want to be seen, heard, and known in the wider space. So you have some type of framework or a product or a service. You want people to know about you, especially those of you who are building your business around yourself as the attractive character, similar to what somebody like myself has done. The attractive character is me. All right, so the work on your game is Dre Baldwin. They are interconnected. They're intertwined. If work on your game goes away, then what is Dre Baldwin talking about? If Dre Baldwin goes away, what is work on your game? So they're intertwined. So if you're looking to do anything like that, whether it comes anything in the thought leadership space, you have a certain framework or something about your background or your personality or the way you're presenting yourself or a book that you wrote or you're doing a podcast or you're a coach, any of those things, those are all very, very personalized offerings. This is what I'm talking about here when I give you this definition of public relations. Professional maintenance of a favorable public image. So the question for you is, what image do you want to project? I get it. You say, Joel, a favorable one, Dre. That's the definition, right? Well, besides that, let's go deeper. What do you want people to know you for? If people retain only one thing about you, what is it? Because just as a side note and a hint, most of the time people will only retain one thing about you. They do not do as deep of a dive on you as you have done on you. They don't remember everything about you. They're going to remember maybe one thing. And how are you going to get it across? If you want people to remember one thing about you, what is it? And how are you going to get them to remember it? How are you going to make it sticky? How are you going to make sure that when they mention your name, they got to mention that thing, and when they mention that thing, they got to mention your name? How do you get Google to say the same thing that you said? All these answers are key for you being your own public relations team. If you want your name connected to this idea or this concept or this product or this service or this framework, it's your job to put all these. First of all, you got to strategize to answer these questions. How are you going to get people to think this way? And then actually execute on doing it. And again, we're going to make a course inside of the university, or at least do a workshop inside the university on these exact things. Point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is how to be your own PR agency, company, person. Number 4, you got to be consistent. All right, public relations doesn't go away. I mean, do I have to keep doing this show? Be consistent. Professional maintenance needs to happen on a consistent basis. You can't just say, all right, I got my name out there, I'm showing up on Google results, all right, I'm good. I'm never publishing anything ever again, because eventually Google will say, all right, this person hasn't published anything in the last 5 years, get rid of them. They're no longer relevant. They ain't doing anything anymore. You must keep doing this. PR does not end. That's the great thing about PR. So anybody who works in PR right now, you know, you can sell people on PR forever, because they always want to have solid public relations. As long as they're alive, as long as the company's in business, they want to have a favorable public image. It never ends. There's no end to PR. Professional maintenance is a consistent thing that must happen. Any of you who works at a company, how often is your company making you get some type of continuing education credits? Or when the events are going on, you need to attend an event, even if it's an online event. Why? Because it's professional development. Development never ends. You never stop developing. Personal development never ends, at least for the people who are interested in actually doing it. So this is a consistent thing that is ongoing. And this is one of the best selling points that PR folks use when they're selling it. As soon as they get you in, they're like, well, I mean, do you want to stop having a favorable public image? Do you want to stop appearing on shows? Do you want to stop having people know what you're up to and what you're doing and caring about you and you being relevant in their minds? It goes on forever. So any of you wants to start a PR agency, this is one of the good reasons to do so, is that nobody can ever say, all right, I got everything that I need from this company, I'm good, I don't need anything else, because this is ongoing forever. They'll handle it so you don't have to. All right, that's the whole point of the PR agency. We will make sure your name stays in the news, or people stay saying positive things about you, or whatever your aim is, we'll do that so you don't have to do it. So this is the benefit of a PR agency, and if you does hire one, is that if you got so many things going on and with yourself and with your company that you can't do it, then you can hire somebody else to do it. Now again, as far as what I know of my audience, the people who listen to this show, most of you do not have that problem where you got so much going on yourself and you need to hire somebody else to make sure that your name stays positive and favorable in the world, because there's so many things being said about you that you can't control them all. As far as I know, my audience, I don't have too many people in my audience who have that issue. I don't even have that issue. I can control what's being said about me, and I can control where my name is showing up, and I can't control where my name is showing up, but I can have enough times that I've controlled it that I can bury any times it's showing up and I don't like it, if there happens to be anything that fits that description. So that's where this is the tactical stuff, the technical stuff of the how to and what to do when it comes to being your own PR. Again, we're going to make a whole course on how exactly that is done. If you're going to be your own public relations, industry, company, whatever, not industry, but company or person, you must be consistently in front of your public. Who is that public? Is that public going to be a podcast audience? Is it going to be a YouTube channel? Is it going to be articles that you write on your website? Is it going to be you appearing physically in a certain space? What is it going to be so that you're consistently in front of those people? And if you do go away, make sure that your name is strong enough that people are still talking about the fact that you're not there. All right, now if you're not that famous, like Dave Chappelle, he had a Chappelle show. He was about to renew the show for, I think, $50 million. He just disappeared. He went away for a couple of years. We didn't hear from him. But the fact that his name was so strong at that point, even when he was gone, his presence was felt. Even in his absence, his presence was felt. Now, maybe you or I, if we were to go away just out of nowhere, now I think if I went away, people would talk about me, at least for a little while. Maybe at least for a couple days, couple weeks. But if your name is not that known just yet and you disappear, people might forget that you were even there in the first place. So make sure you are consistently in front of your public until you had that Dave Chappelle problem. All right, somebody to handle that somebody has to handle that if you're going to be your own PR company. Whether that's you hire somebody, you have an assistant who can do it, but you have to understand the how-tos, the inner workings of what exactly you do to get yourself seen, to get yourself heard, and get yourself known. I've given you the overview here, and again, we're going to go into the details in the university. Let's recap today's class, which is how to be your own public relations company. I told you in 2015, I hired a public relations company. They got me some appearances, but the appearances were pretty much worthless. I could have got more and better appearances on my own than what they were able to get for myself. And I appeared on the show like 2 months after I fired them that was bigger than all the shows they got me on put together. All that being said, the person who was working there sent me a nasty message simply because they were a dying company who they hadn't really updated themselves with the times. So I was really the idiot. It wasn't them. I was the idiot for even hiring them in the first place. I didn't know then what I know now. The good thing is Hove did that, so you won't have to go through that. Hove did that, so hopefully you won't have to go through that. And I'm Hove, and I'm gonna tell you today how to be your own media company. Point number 1, have a compelling presentation. Nobody covers a person who is uninteresting. Something about you or your work, hopefully both, needs to be attention grabbing. See the episode on personality if you don't have any. Point number 2, learn how to pitch. It's 80% of the game. I've done TED Talks, been on 200 shows. I played basketball overseas. All of those are based on the fact that I have ability, yes, but that ability would not have mattered if I didn't have the ability to sell myself and pitch myself. That's where you cross the threshold from having game to people knowing that you have game. Those are 2 different things. And how do you do this? Tell me in 45 seconds or less why I should give a damn about you and or what you do, ideally both. Number 3, public relations is defined as the professional maintenance of a favorable public image. What image do you want to project? What do you want people to know you for? If they can only retain one thing about you, which they probably only will, what is it? How do you get it across? How do you make it sticky? And point number 4, be consistent. Professional maintenance happens on a consistent basis. It's an ongoing thing, like bathing, like working out, like positive energy. It's not something you do once. It's something you must do forever. So any of you want to start a PR company, that's the best reason to do it, because people got to keep paying you forever, as long as they're alive at least. So if you're going to be your own PR, you got to be consistently in front of your public, whoever that happens to be, and or have somebody hand on that to make sure that your name stays in people's minds. And these days, as short as attention spans are claimed to be, this is an ongoing job. You want to learn how to get yourself out there. First of all, you should take the Sell Yourself course inside of Work on Your Game University. Read the book, The Seller's Mindset, and we're going to be doing a workshop and making a course about what are the specifics of the things that you need to do when it comes to getting your name out there in the media space, and especially those of you who are in the thought leader world, or at least you're planning to get into it. That'll all be in WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. That's WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all